So you've just got your Nintendo Switch, or maybe you've had it for a while, but now you're finally thinking about buying a Pro Controller. Boom. One of these is real, and one of these is fake. Some of you might be put off by the £55 price tag that a Pro Controller costs. It is expensive. But what if I told you that one of these cost me £16? That means I could buy 3 fake ones for the price of one real controller. But is it any good? Well, I'm going to compare them both on 3 main points. Looks, can you tell it's fake? Feel, does it feel cheap and nasty? Does it feel fake? And actually using it, which is massively important. And sometimes I feel like it gets skimmed over the top of by a lot of the big YouTubers, because they just get it out of the box, they look at it, they feel it, and then they chuck on one game and they play it for 10 minutes and then they give their verdict. Whereas the controller might be good for one type of game, like a side scroller, but not very good for another type of game, like a shooter, for example. I've had my fake controller for a month now, and I've played it on a very different range of games, so I should be able to pass good judgment and give my final verdict on whether it's worth buying for £16. So first things first. This one's my fake controller. I got it in the Super Smash Bros. Design, and this one's my real controller. I'm going to start the review now with comparing them on looks. And straight away, they both look identical. You couldn't tell the fake away from the real one. Every nut and cranny, every little bolt hole is in the exact same position. Honestly, they've nailed every single aspect of getting it looking exactly like the real one, apart from one thing. The real one has the Switch logo located on the front there, whereas the fake one doesn't. And also when you flick the controller around, it says Nintendo on the back, whereas on the fake one, the gap where it should say Nintendo is just blank. So apart from that, the fake controller is literally identical to the £55 real controller. And I don't think you'd even notice that the logo's missing unless you physically pointed it out to someone. So based on looks, the fake controller is going to get a 9 out of 10 for me on that. So that moves us on to number 2, which is how does it feel? A lot of fake products can be made out of cheaper plastics, so it feels cheap and nasty. They can feel a lot lighter than the actual real product itself. The buttons can feel stiff and sticky and just don't have that spring back. Whereas on this, I've not found one difference between the fake one and the real one so far. The triggers spring back nicely. It's still got a trigger system. It's not just buttons, where a lot of fake things will change the trigger for more physical buttons, like at the PS2. The analogs move nicely. Everything is bang on. The buttons feel perfect. The weight of the controller is the exact same as the real one. Literally the exact same. So once again, I can't find anything different between these two and how they feel that's going to make me think it's worthwhile buying this one for £55 when I can get this for £16. So on the how does it feel aspect, I'm also going to give it a 10. Why not? There's literally no difference between them both. So a 10 on how does it feel. So now we're on the third point, which is actually using the controller. And this is where we start to see a little bit of a difference in quality between the real one and the fake one. The first thing I noticed is the sensitivity of the analog sticks. Now if you watch, you'll see that when I move this analog stick a little bit, there's no movement on the calibration. Still no movement. Oh, there we go. So the analogs had to get to here for it to register any kind of movement. And then also when I see how the dot has gone all the way to the end of the calibration, whereas my analog's still got room to play. Look, see how the calibration thing isn't moving at all. Once again, movement there. The analog's been moved, but there's no movement on screen. Now we're just starting to get a little bit of movement at this position with the analog, and then hit the end of the movement, but the analog's just about to hit the end of its movement now. See that little bit of play? So this is fine when you're playing games like Mario Kart or Mario games where basically you're side scrollers, where you're just running across and you're just going left or right, and it's as simple as that. But when you get into your more complicated games, let's say like your first person shooters, like Fortnite or Warframe or any game, any first-person shooter really, where you need that tiny little bit of precision, where you just need to slightly move to the left or to the right, and you're moving your analog stick and you're not getting any movement back. That's where its downfall is, I think. And then just for comparison, this is the £55 real Switch controller, and you'll be able to see as soon as I touch the analog, there's movement. Look at that. The tiniest bit. And then also it follows all the way through until my physical analog hits the end. When I hit the end, look, that hits the end. And it's not because the other controller's not been calibrated. Trust me, it's the first thing I did when I noticed it. I recalibrated it. But I think it's just obviously the software inside is not quite up to scratch like they've put in the real controller. This is bang on. So like I say, you're on a first person shooter, you're aiming down the middle and you're slightly to the right, boom, you can adjust like that, slightly to the right. It mimics exactly the motions that you do on the controller. So if you are someone that plays a lot of precision needed games like first person shooters or something like that, then the Fake controller isn't quite up to scratch for them. You'll get by with it, don't get me wrong, but it's not perfect and it's not nice to play with, I'll be honest, when you need that tiny little bit of movement and you're moving the analog and nothing's happening, and then you keep moving it and then next minute, instead of that tiny little bit of movement, you get a massive bit of movement. It's very frustrating. So for me, on that point, the Fake Pro controller lets me down. One little thing that I did notice that did quite impress me was the fact that the Fake controller is picked up by the Switch. It's shown graphically as the Fake controller that I've bought, which is quite surprising, which means I assume that they've put something in there so that it registers as the Super Smash Bros. Controller. So I was quite impressed by that. Also, one thing to compare is the motion controls. I've not had any problems. Don't get me wrong, I don't use them that much, but when I have used the motion controls, they've worked bang on. Another downfall for actually using it though is I know that the amiibo thing on the analog stick doesn't work very well. I don't have any amiibos myself, so I can't actually try it out myself, but from what I've read and seen, a lot of people have complained about that as well. So the score for actually using it, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. And the reason I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10 is for the fact that the precision is quite a big thing for me. When I move my analog slightly, I want it to react exactly as I'm inputting it on the analog. So for me, that's knocked it back quite a lot. If you're someone that plays a lot of just party games like Mario, side scrollers for example, or things that aren't serious, then it's a perfect controller. You'll give it 10 out of 10 on everything, because you wouldn't even notice the little calibration thing really, unless you're playing as a first person shooter. So if you do just play them kind of games, the side scrollers, the Mario Karts and stuff like that, then it's worth buying. It's an absolute steal. Wherever if you do play first person shooters, then I do recommend just going all out for the real controller. So now for the final verdict. Is it worth buying the £16 controller, or should you just go all out and buy the £55 one? It's definitely worth buying the £16 controller if you only play side scrollers like Mario Kart. I can't stress it enough. It's a completely perfect controller if you only play these kind of games. Side scrollers, simple games where you just need to go left and right, then you won't have any problems at all. More in-depth games where it's like a first-person shooter where you need to slightly move this way or that way or aim, then you need at least one real Pro controller in your household for sure. That's what I've got, and I think that's what I'm going to do. I've got the one real one, and I'll use that for when I'm playing my first-person shooters and stuff like that. And then the other one, I'll just use for Mario Kart and whatever, side-scrolling games. And obviously it's perfect for when friends come over as well. We can all use the Fake one, because when friends come over, that's the kind of games you play. You play your Mario Karts and your Mario Deluxe thing, games like that, the side-scrolling games. So definitely it's worth. I do recommend buying it, and In total, I'm going to give the Fate controller a score of 7 out of 10. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Like I say, the looks are bang on. The feel is bang on. The only thing that really lets it down is the sensitivity of the analogs, to be honest. But it is quite a big thing because obviously you buy a controller to control. So if it's not quite controlling it as you want it to, then it's going to lose quite a lot of scores. But like I said, and I can't stress it enough, it depends on the kind of games you play. Like always, if this video has helped you make up your mind on a Fate controller or not, then hit the like button and subscribe.